This daily drawing exercise is an architectural detail that's part of an old railway station from the former East Berlin, a little section of old Berlin architecture which I found really quite enchanting. So at this point, you're watching this in real time. I thought this would be a good exercise for a 10-minute daily drawing, and in the 10 minutes I get basically the line outline of the building done, which was what basically I was hoping to do. And that's a worthwhile daily exercise, even if we do no more than that, because we've then had practice at observation and at drawing, taking scale and proportion into account. And we haven't had to spend time adding the detail to the drawing. But we've still had a very worthwhile practice session improving our drawing, working on those skills. Particularly if we don't have much time to do any drawing at all, but we want to work towards improving our drawing, simply drawing very oversimplified versions of our subjects, but taking particular care to get the proportions correct and the scale consistent over the whole drawing is a quick and easy thing to do. And yet it's a skill that if we don't get on top of it, we can draw great detail minutely, accurately, overwhelmingly. But if the underlying shapes of our drawings aren't right, if the underlying proportions of our drawings aren't correct, then in many ways we're wasting our time. We're better off putting that effort into focusing on the basic skills of keeping proportions and keeping scale correct. So I've started fairly obviously for me, I think, on that center pillar, small pillar that has an arched window space on one side and an arched entranceway on another, and then probably not quite half of a dummy arch space on the other side. So I'm working hard at proportions on this. If you're finding this series helpful or this video interesting, please hit the like button for me. That helps me out as well. Now, I'm using a 0.2mm Copic multiliner. This pen is reaching the end of its life, and it seems to alternate between not having enough ink flowing and being a bit scratchy to being a bit blobby if the nib is left for too long in any one spot, or sometimes just at the start of the line, a little bit of ink has accumulated, which leaves a bit of a blob. But in some ways, this creates its own visual appearance to the overall drawing. I quite like the somewhat scraped view of some of the lines, the variation that we get when the ink's not flowing as freely as it perhaps once was. And it creates almost more of a graphite type feel because of the variation of line width and intensity that the uneven ink flow gives us. I think it's quite an interesting medium to use. Slightly drying out pen. And then equally at times we get these blobs which add this sometimes useful but other times more random darknesses around our whole thing. And because we often start several lines or even more than that from the one place, if there's a little bit of a heaviness of ink at that starting point, it can become a bit heavy by the end, so just need to pay attention. Or you could just use a pen that's not half dried out. This pen is refillable, so I should just actually change the nib and refill the ink before I use it again. But you can see what I mean when I talk about we can just draw in a way to practice the major lines and the major elements of our drawing. We don't have to spend time doing lots of hatching. think I'm going to do the dome now. Yep. So there is a slight curve on this line. It's not straight. And the dome, or the partial dome that sits on top, flares out quite noticeably at the base. So I'm not going to have time to try and represent that in any way with hatching for shading, but certainly in the silhouette I'll need to. Now I did decide as soon as I began to draw this that I wasn't going to put the traffic light in, and I wasn't going to put the metal, it looks like it's a support for signage, the metal sign post, that's also on the left hand side of our drawing. Now that light line I've just done across there, that's where the shape of the dome changes from being convex to concave, or vice versa, whichever way. But where the curving direction of the dome shifts from coming downwards to now flaring outwards. And so it was partly to help me center the dome, partly to give perhaps a little visual indication that something's happening there, but very lightly, so that hopefully it doesn't appear to be a hard edge change of direction, which of course it's not. And that will do for that. Now I've got the rest of the decorative element on top of the dome, so I straighten that little ridge where the dome suddenly moves straight up a few centimeters. And now the challenge is to keep everything stacked nice and tight, to keep this looking symmetrical, to get enough of the different shape elements as this little conical point rises to keep the interest, but to have them look symmetrical and aligned on the one tight axis. So that's my challenge. But you will notice that I basically draw each shape separately as I move upwards. And leans slightly to the right, but it is a quick drawing, so I'm not going to worry about that. And now I want to give some indication that this is nestled into the corner of a larger structure, that it's not a freestanding kiosk or anything. We're still comfortably in our 10 minutes real-time drawing. When the 10 minutes of real-time drawing is up and I've pretty much finished the outline of everything, and I start adding some hatching to create some interest and do the trees, and I do a representation of the shadows and shapes we can see on the other side of the glass of this shop, probably a cafe is my guess. I speed up to double time times 3/4 time. So that's probably about 3.5 times normal speed is my guess. If you want to see that part significantly slower, you can use the cog icon that's provided as part of the YouTube console experience, and you can reduce the speed to half the video speed, which will bring it back to much closer to my actual drawing speed. So if you're interested in how I create the effect of what we see in the shop, in the shadows through the glass, and you want to see just how I do that more slowly, you can use that cog icon. So now we've got the very foreshortened side view of the wall that's moving away from us in the direction of the railway line. You can see on the extreme right the railway viaduct that's going off, and the shadow and the dark metal colours of underneath the railway lines. So as I said, with the severe foreshortening, we're really drawing just the effect of the detail that we see. We don't even want to see too clearly what's here, because then we might try and draw it too exactly. The perspective angles are important. Scenes such as this, still necessary to, before we start, find eye level and just see how that affects things. Now, I had to do a bit of estimation with the ground level lines because there was that obstruction in our reference, which I didn't feel added anything of any value to our scene. So we're pretty much done the 10 minutes. We're just in the last seconds of that, and we'll speed up significantly and get to the end. Of course, you'll find this reference photo on my channel community page if you want to have a go. Now, you can't scroll back and see every single photo I've posted. I believe it's a 500 photo limit, and we're certainly past that now. So these aren't available forever, so don't leave it too long to do any that you want to be able to see the reference photo for separate to the video. And now we've sped up, and it's going to be very zip, zip, zip. Finishing the actual building, and now thinking about what's happening inside. Now, it really is hard to work out exactly, even just inside the doorway, what's happening. So again, this ability to see the overall effect rather than need to see the detail and to understand the structure and how it all works, but to see the effect and to try and capture that with our lines, with our marks, is an incredibly versatile technique. So working on this large tree, there's a lot of shade and shadow here. The colours and perhaps the lighting looks a bit odd in the reference because it actually was very shaded here. So I've had to tweak up the exposure and add light and sharpen details and add contrast to make it a lot clearer than it is in the original photo. And as I said, if you want to watch me do this through the glass section a bit slower, you can use the cog icon to slow things down. And if you haven't hit the like button and you're still watching at this point, please, why not help me out as well? That would be great. And I'd love to hear your comments about if you're doing this daily drawing exercise series with any regularity, and if so, has it helped your drawing in a discernible way? I've had a number of comments already where people have said they can really see the difference, that the consistency, the everyday or the almost everyday, even just for 10 or 15 minutes, has meant for their drawing. And one person's mentioned that even their family was saying how much their drawings had improved. It's the consistency every day that helps. And we're just about done. What do you think? G'day, I'm Stephen Travers. Look, I hope you found this helpful, interesting to watch. Why not give it a go? Find the photo on my channel community page. But hey, whatever you draw, however you draw it, in whatever time, make sure you have fun. I'll see you next video. Bye.